My idea to live more gratefully began at a New Year's Eve party on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I should have been happy in my little black dress, but my Spanx were too tight. My heels were too high, and I wanted to get home. Just before midnight, someone turned on the TV, and I observed the revelers in Times Square with awe. I'd had a perfectly nice year, but nothing that made me want to put on a funny hat and dance in the streets. What could possibly happen in the coming year to change that? Winning the lottery might help, but no, then next year I would just complain that my taxes were too high. Move to a tropical island? I would surely grumble about a sunburn. I suddenly realized that if you wait for events to make you happy, you'll be waiting for a very long time. If you change your attitude and perspective, you can be happier immediately. So why not do that? In that moment, I formulated a plan. I would spend a year living gratefully and maybe write a book about it. I'd had only one glass of champagne, so the idea still made sense the next morning. And I decided to launch the year by being more grateful to my husband. I have a very nice husband. I have also been married a very long time. Whether it's a husband, a house, or a shiny new car, you get used to things and you stop noticing them. Psychologists call it habituation. A classic response is to keep upping the ante. When the Porsche you yearned for is no longer exciting, get a Ferrari. But after a few days of driving, the new car becomes the baseline of your experience, and you forget why its fancy lines seemed so special in the first place. And cars are easier to trade in than husbands. The French novelist Marcel Proust said that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. I wanted to bring those fresh eyes to the man with whom I shared my bed, my jokes, and my joint checking account. Rather than wanting more, different, and better, it was time to start appreciating the husband I had, rather than the imaginary cross between Brad Pitt and Bill Gates, who would always remember to remove his muddy boots at the door. On the Friday after New Year's, my husband and I headed to our house in the country. And as we pulled into the driveway, I turned to him and I said, "Thank you for driving." He looked at me and said, "I always drive." I know, I replied, but it's snowy and dark, and I'm grateful that you're such a good driver, so thank you. As the weekend continued, I thanked him several more times for being kind, for being helpful, and even for being so handsome. He didn't comment, but when we sat down to dinner on Sunday night, he looked at me and said, "Thank you for cooking." "I always cook," I said. But in just one weekend, the vibe between us had started to change. We were noticing each other. We were appreciating. You think that by being grateful to someone, it's a gift to the other person, but it's really a gift to yourself. Gratitude makes you feel better. It changes your perspective. The biggest regret most of us have in looking back is thinking of all the time wasted being unhappy or angry. I had planned to be grateful to my husband for the first month of my project. That seemed like more than enough. But it brought such joy to our marriage that I kept it going the whole year. When the next New Year's rolled around, I hugged my husband at midnight and I started to cry. "I don't want this year of gratitude to end," I told him. He looked at me and said, "Well, you could try being nice next year too."